Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the London Centre for this NLA Awards event behind the winning projects. My name's Lucy Millie-Champ, and I'm a programme manager here at the NLA, and I'm really pleased to be chairing tonight's event. For those of you that are new to NLA, we're the membership organisation for London's built environment sector. We build relationships, develop skills, and champion our community, guided by the New London Agenda, all with the aim of supporting better outcomes for London. We act locally, but collaborate globally, welcoming visitors all around the world here at the London Centre, so you're very welcome. And yes, the NLA Awards programme celebrate London's best projects, but they also speak to the global leadership of our built environment community. The schemes we're going to hear about tonight stand shoulder to shoulder with the very best internationally. And this international perspective was reflected in our exceptional jury who were part of the awards process, and their industry leaders whose work shaped cities across the world. So we were really honoured to be joined by Sadie Morgan, who's founding director of DRMM and chair of the NLA Sounding Board, Jeanette Sadiq Khan, principal at Bloomberg Associates and former commissioner of the New York City Department for Transportation, Finn Williams, city architect of Malmö, and Joseph Seal Henry, Director of Cultural Planning for the City of Boston. So in November last year, just next door in the Guildhall, we had our NLA Awards lunch where we announced the winners and celebrated a year of collaboration, excellence, and collective ambition. And it's always a brilliant, very fast-paced event as we move through all our people, place, and project categories. So tonight is an opportunity to slow down things slightly, but which in NLA terms still means 10 slides in 5 minutes for each of our speakers. So yeah, this evening brings together the teams behind a selection of these award-winning projects, sharing what they tested, what they learned, and how their work is shaping London's built environment. And the projects span categories from meanwhile activation through to education, retrofit, workplaces, master planning, and our overall and housing winner. And together they offer insights into the ideas, decisions, and trade-offs behind some of London's most impactful recent schemes. And just to give you a bit of context about some of the projects as well, this is the second year that entries have been assessed against the New London Agenda, which is our best practice framework for city making. So these awards aren't just about architectural excellence, but also about measurable impact on communities, people, and the places where Londoners live, work, and come together. So as I mentioned before, each speaker will present 10 slides at 30 seconds per slide, sharing short provocations that highlight how their teams are thinking beyond boundaries, leveraging innovation, and working in partnership, which are some of the pillars of the New London Agenda. So before we begin, I'd just like to say a huge thank you to our international jury and London-based expert assessors whose insight and expertise underpin the whole awards process from the first submission to the final judging. And I'd also like to extend a huge thank you to our sponsors of various awards categories, which are Airflow, Maylim, Muse, NRP, Ray Howe, and Urban Space Management for their invaluable support as well. So you've heard enough from me, but just a bit of housekeeping before we start. Do make yourself comfortable. There are a few more seats as well for those standing at the back. Feel free to come forward. And the talk's going to last for about an hour, so feel free to help yourself to drinks throughout from the kitchenette at the back. And for the toilets, they're back through the doors that you came through and down the stairs just before reception. And just so you're aware, there are no scheduled fire drills this evening, so if you do hear alarm, please do exit by the entrance you came through. And yeah, just a final reminder that we're going to have an audience Q&A at the end, so do keep your questions in mind as we go, as I'll invite all the speakers back up to answer any questions that you have. So I'm very delighted to kick off our presentations with our first category, which celebrates projects that treat the city as a work in progress, with assessors praising the winner for creatively activating underused spaces and engaging residents and local businesses to support both short and long-term ambitions. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Kevin Haley, founder and managing director of Kevin Haley Studio, presenting Super Satellite and Next, winner of the Meanwhile Activation Award.
Thank you very much. This is New Acres, located in southwest London, in Wandsworth, comprises 18 towers, 1,000 homes, 2,000 people living here, and in about 6 months from now, approximately 50 businesses on the ground floor offering a mix of culture, activity, wellness, and retail. And when this project started 2 years ago, we were asked to reimagine what the ground floor could be, because quite frankly, they're incredible. The high streets are emptying out, new neighborhoods being built with little imagination on the ground floor. I spent my time walking the streets in the beginning, meeting people, locals, to understand what this could be. In the end, I moved into New Acres. I needed a place to bring everyone together because there were so many amazing ideas that were collected. We didn't have a place to prototype, to test, to discuss. So we created Super Satellite Net, and it comprised of 4 areas. This was the space just before there, what it started as. Well, first area was a community cafe space, literally run by my neighbor who was living there. It wasn't a place where you went and got a fast cup of coffee. In fact, it was really slow. They were there to get to know people by their name, ask them about ideas. We ran workshops, flexible space that we kept on transforming. Clubs were formed. But this was a soft edge entering the space. The second component was the archive. Archive was essentially a structure that allowed us to collect past stories. So we were collecting books about the heritage of Wandsworth, collecting objects that represent the sea, making new things. Right inside the archive was a space that we could private discussion, where we were starting to form ideas, businesses before that wanted to do businesses, but all things were being gathered. The third component was the concept space, me doing Reformers Pilates, which I'll never do again. And this was a space that allowed us to give this space to businesses or people ideas, nothing. Test, develop perhaps a business model, see what works, what we engage with. Stuff we were gathering in the cafe was being tested in space, the long-term vision of New Acres. Final space, right out the back, and you had to walk through the coffee shop, through the concept space, into our creative space, which was Super Satellite. And the Super Satellite was designed, deliberately finished. Floor and walls, space for RCA alumni, Royal College of Art, space to take them outside the academic walls, to a place, and potentially build from the waste from the development. 18 towers, things being disposed of, doors, electric cable trays, turned into objects. Ultimately, we were there to just play, investigate, live in front of them. And the way we did this was we set up a series of residencies. Residency 1 explored waste, ideas around how we can waste, how we're building, how can we create adaptive reuse responses. Also, one of my favorite projects was up with the local council came to us with a series of, vendors or they were researching from city infrastructure, escapes, nighttime economy, and the idea was to give each one of the artists in the space an opportunity for this collaboration with local people. And we discuss these ideas open. All of this knowledge began to long-term ambition of what we're trying to do at New Acres on that ground floor. Also in the space, decided to start to build huge-scale installations, and one of my favorite ones was with a collective firsthand, which I'm part of, decided to build a pub in 5 days from waste with the local community. Here it is, it's the same space. Again, this is called the Craft and Draft. The point of the Craft and Draft wasn't just to make a pub. The idea, 50 pubs are closing down in social spaces. And Wandsworth was actually one of the largest breweries historically there. Perfect opportunity to create a platform to ask the question. Imagine the pub doing socially, space itself, how it might be used. And we then gave the keys to the local community, and the community used it for nighttime science lessons, nighttime dog walking, heritage, 30 different uses. And I just want to end on by saying, I learned from the project, places don't succeed just because they're designed, they succeed because people are also invited to shape them. Running a space is about balance, not control. It comes alive when we know when to step back. Finally, the ground floor doesn't need bigger brands, it's a civic process that serves.
so much, Kevin. I think that was really incredible presentation to kick off. I'm really impressed how you were able to consolidate that amazing project into a story in just 5 minutes. Really exciting to see new innovative ways of activating the underused space. So thank you so much for that presentation. We'll swiftly move on to our next presentation, which is the winner of a category that recognises London spaces for learning. And I'm really delighted to welcome Ian Palmer, who is one of our expert assessors and also the head of UK specification at Airflow, to introduce the winner of the education category and our next speaker. Airflow is the category sponsor who it wouldn't be possible to do these awards without Airflow. So over to Ian.
Thanks, Lucy. Just a quick introduction to Airflow. So we've been in the air movement industry for over 60 years. Not too far from we're actually president.
Is that not working? Okay, we're switching mics. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, so basically, yeah. Yeah, school for
was the Girls' Day School Trust, who are one of the largest independent schools for kind of group for girls, and actually they're committed to they're kind of providing outstanding education for the girls learn. The aspiration for Notting Hill in specific was that their pupils had to feel inspired and stimulated as they learn, wanted to be joyful for both and for the staff, and also to set a benchmark for design. So pretty much a dream brief for us. And I think our work directly responded to the mission. We combined thoughtful design, long-term sustainability, and also genuine value. Our first major test, I think, was strategic. It was kind of retrofit, or do we new build? I think when nowadays we have to be responsible, we need to look at our existing buildings and do something with them. This one had been extended, adapted, patched up countless times. It's on a massive, loads of accessibility issues inside, and it was, where, as you can see, designed as houses, really, not a school. And I think demolition offered us two major opportunities: to organise the movement, visibility, and deliver a modern. The building was organised, as you can see, in 2 blocks, and we had the central space, which forms the entrance, welcoming, with views playground behind, and also vertically upward. Can you hear me? Oh. Absolutely fine. We can go here. Okay. Yeah. So as I just mentioned, I think this image there is about our welcome space. And actually what was super important was that we needed a kind of clarity of building the diagram. And I think before they were used to cellular spaces, this really allowed them to come in and then see where they're going. And I think it really helped in terms of wayfinding. I think in terms of massing, it was kind of varied, and each block you will see has different characters, and we use kind of pitched roofs, and we kind of pulled them up to respond to the site, which you're going to see in a second. I think it was kind of a playful building, and I think we wanted to ensure that it had this kind of playful silhouette. You can see the space in the middle. We had these 2 blocks with them, and then there was the entrance in the middle, and then there was which had the library above, so it was all about learning on show. I think the other thing we wanted to do is ensure sustainability was embedded in the architecture. Every decision was about the environment. This image shows we've got north lights, which bring really nice light into the classrooms. We have south-facing PVs on the roof. We've also got this highly insulated fabric. And then the other thing we have was they're all naturally ventilated, and we've got this hit and miss brickwork, which disguises the louvers in the space. It's a red brick building, which was we picked that to do with the context. And I think it was what we also got, you can see the texture we tried to bring. The ground floor is green glazed brick, which we use to kind of bring out special spaces. It also brought the scale down. The children play in this area. It's quite tactile. They could touch it, and it all kind of allowed them to feel that it was something that they could touch and embrace. So I'm going to talk about lessons. Engagement matters. I think talking to the children, we were a predominantly female design team, which is very unusual in this day and age. And I think this is a unique opportunity for us to talk to the girls and really explain that we're architects, engineers, acousticians, MEP, service engineers, all kinds of things. And I think we learned how important it was for those students to see them self-represented in that design team. And also we learned about science. They've got a science lab in their building. That's very unusual. And I think they were really keen that we did that. And we encouraged them to share ideas. We worked with them we asked them about their perfect classroom. In terms of acoustics then, this was a real key lesson for me. It was on a flight path to school, so it was quite noisy, airplanes going over. I said, do we have to do that? They're kind of used to having the airplane noise in their school. And actually, that was completely disproven. We complied with BB93, which is a DFE standard for acoustics, and I think it's the calmest space. The first thing they said when they moved in was how calm it was. We used different types of treatment for acoustics. You can see the wood will over on the left, and then we had the slats in the library. So music and library, very quiet. I think CLT is a fantastic, my next lesson. I think it has a kind of low carbon material, obviously. It allowed us to minimize the internal finishes. This image you can see before, and as we were building it, and then it creates this kind of very calm and inviting and calming space. And I think everyone talks about that when you walk in. I think the other thing, which was amazing, the girls could see their school arrive as a flat pack, erected in 8 weeks, and it saved a load of cost and time, which was pretty exciting. The other thing I want to talk about, my final lesson, was about the outside, maximising the opportunity for learning outside the classroom. And I think we really worked hard with BD Landscape to do this. And I think because it was on this major step, we created loads of different areas. We had the welcome garden, we had a science garden, we had a forest school, and this is the reception, a kind of a defined area for the early years, the kind of younger children. You can see there's a setback. This is a south-facing facade. We integrated that within the facade so they can free flow play all year round. And I think, so what did we learn? I think our school building, we designed it to support questioning, creativity, collaboration, and resilience. And we did this through flexible learning spaces, strong connection to the inside and outside, and a calm environment. And I think what's kind of interesting is when we were there taking these photographs that I've showed you tonight, a girl came over and chatted to us and said, "What are you doing?" And we said, "We were the architects." And she said, "Oh, thanks for designing us this fantastic building," and that's really, I guess, the best lesson of all. Thank you. Oops, there we go.
Are we going to try, is this good? We're going to try this one. Okay. Thank you so much, Carol. Thank you for so gracefully taking us through that presentation despite our technical difficulties. Really beautiful project, really amazing to see all the CLT and the meaningful engagement. So thanks so much for taking us through that project. Okay, next we have Oliver Cook and Francis Fawcett, who are going to do a little double act for us, directors at Cook Fawcett Architects, and they're going to present Cockpit Deptford, which was the winner of this year's Retrofit Award. And this award celebrates adaptive reuse, and the judges were really impressed by this project for opening up the world of making to the public through visibility and access and keeping the building open during refurbishment. But I won't say too much. I'll pass over to Oliver and Francis now.
Sorry to disappoint. Just me, Oliver. We tried it and we realised that 2 of us speaking for 5 minutes was going to complicate things. Yeah, hi. What do I press to start? So we're going to talk about Cockpit Deptford. Cockpit is a charity that supports makers in the craft industry. Cockpit Deptford is the building in the foreground. This was a picture taken before the project was completed. But it's a useful one because it describes the context in Deptford by the creek, a really rapidly changing area where a lot of things are kind of being brought into tension with one another, kind of residential development alongside a creative enterprise zone where Lewisham are really keen to support makers. This is a little bit about the history of the site. It's a former industrial wharf, and we were interested in the idea that somehow this kind of theme of making kind of refers to kind of former industrial past of Deptford, and looking for ways to kind of continue the sort of spirit of some of these kind of found qualities in a retrofit project. One of the things that's kind of central to Cockpit is that as a charity to support making, they're obviously interested in how the public engage with makers. And so this kind of dual function of a kind of private building that has a kind of public offer was kind of central to the building. That resonated with the history of the site. So this mural in front of the existing building at one point had this graffiti that's called Love Over Gold in the 80s, which was kind of response to Thatcherism and the idea that somehow community should be more important than profit. That inspired the Dire Straits album Love Over Gold, which in turn inspired artwork in the front of the building. And so somehow this question about how to kind of open up the building to the public was very intertwined with this kind of memory of the kind of history of the building as a kind of community asset. Our project did some quite kind of practical things, like creating two entrances, one for makers, one for the public, and that kind of foregrounded the conversation about how we could kind of deal with the front of the building. There was this old kind of inaccessible garden space, and so a big kind of theme to the project was how to sort of break into that and kind of make that accessible. This is kind of literally creating a big opening in that front wall, kind of as a means to kind of create this sort of quite dramatic new front door for Cockpit. And you'll see in the next slide, kind of punching through, we wanted to make this garden accessible, but we also wanted to kind of retain some of these kind of found qualities of the kind of former history of the site. So this wall along the front is actually the original wharf wall. So when we were kind of doing things like making new gates and kind of breaking into it, we wanted to sort of retain some of those kind of industrial qualities, which also spoke very much to Cockpit's kind of raison d'etre as a kind of space for making and as a space for craft. So the kind of deliberately sort of Meccano-esque quality of some of these things, this was a collaboration with Cake Industries, who helped us on the design of some of these elements. Another really important part of the project was that it should be an opportunity for collaboration with Cockpit's maker community. And in particular, the idea was that this mural on the front wall could be replaced by a work that was made by one of the makers. So this is Amber Coker's work, and for her it was an opportunity to kind of upscale and to take a kind of way of working that was very kind of handmade and crafted and blow that up into a kind of architectural commission. So this was her original artwork on the left, this is her on the right, kind of sampling tiles and things before kind of then finally kind of making the project with us for this big kind of tile installation. This artwork was developed with the local community, so all of the kind of text and drawings and things on the wall were a kind of collaboration with local school children, then translated into kind of multiple languages to reflect the diversity of Deptford. And then, as I was saying before, it was a sort of opportunity to say, like, how could craft be kind of blown up at a kind of architectural scale to kind of refer to what was going on in the building beyond. As a sort of platform for collaboration, the sort of secret garden space, which we sort of revealed behind, was then a project that we delivered with the furniture maker Sebastian Cox, and it was a kind of opportunity for him to do a sort of foray into kind of landscape architecture, where all of these plants were selected because of their use in craft. So they all have kind of properties that are either to do with basket weaving or dyeing or these kind of things. The garden itself was also an opportunity to kind of reuse waste material from the site. And then finally, the kind of end of the project, one of the things that was, I suppose, most satisfying about it was talking to people when the building opened and hearing, for example, that no one had really ever known what was going on behind this wall. And suddenly this sort of transformation to kind of invite people into the building was an opportunity for the local community to come in and learn about craft and to sort of celebrate what happens in Cockpit.
Thanks so much, Oliver. I do know that Francis is here, so if you have any questions for both of them at the end, they're going to be around. So yeah, do make the most of that. Yeah, such a great presentation. Thank you so much. Even going ahead of time was very impressive. But yeah, really beautiful to see how the street was also transformed through that project, as well as the spaces behind the wall. So please now join me in welcoming Francis Kroll, project architect at Fletcher Priest, who's presenting Fetter Lane, which is the winner of the workplaces category. And this is a really inspiring workplace that was awarded for setting such a positive precedent for sustainable development in central London. So over to you, Francis. There he is.
Hello. Yeah, is this thing working now? Please don't ask me any questions about cockpit. I can try my best, but anyway, different Francis. So yeah, I'm here to talk about Fetter Lane. For those of you who don't know, Fetter Lane, yes, is located in the City of London. It's located just off of Holborn and Chancery Lane, and just before you get to Fleet Street. It's a really vibrant area, loads of history, loads of amenity, really exciting. And because of this reason, Yard 9 and Beaumont approached us and asked us to develop a new, adaptable, flexible workspace to the area. And yeah, really great. And as you can see, St. Paul's is just down the road, which is great. So this is an example of what we inherited. So the existing building is in the top left. It was a post-war office and ex-printing press. The interior is just on the bottom left. Very small, 2.4 meter clear ceiling heights with existing public routes that were not the most inspiring. And yet the site presented loads of challenges, which I'll expand a little bit more on. But this really led us to think, okay, we've been asked to develop a workspace. The key challenges really are, what is a workspace post-pandemic, and how do we approach such a challenging site? And this concept really tries to encompass all of that. And what you can see is essentially leaning into the existing public greenery and spaces, wrapping it around the building, dealing with the existing massing, testing loads of different solutions, and we really wanted to kind of embed it within its context, with loads of making use of the natural light, etc. So this is kind of the actualization of that concept in the plan. You can see the existing St. Dunstan's Gardens in the lower left. We've carved out the ground floor of the building to extend the greenery into a new pocket park. It deals with an existing Grade 2 listed building on the left also. We've introduced a bike store, a cafe, a new pub. So we're really trying to let all that activity into the building and really improve that existing context. And actually, our new office entrance is also located there. Anyway, this is an as-built example of what that new pocket park looks like. The existing St. Dunstan's Gardens that I mentioned is just beyond the frame. And yeah, essentially we've created this new public route through the space, new benches. It's great to see that now people are having their lunches there. We've got massive ferns, looks a bit like Jurassic Park, but it's great. It's really a really nice addition to the area. And you can also see the new cycle store, which has really been given kind of front of place. So in answer to the first question in terms of workplace post-COVID, the question is really what people feel are valuable now in a workspace. And one of those is fresh air, natural light, links to nature, and openable windows are always going to be a joy. But yeah, it's really bringing in all that fresh air, circulation, and making somewhere that's better than home to work in, which obviously people got used to. And that was a really key challenge, but it's something that we decided to follow through. And on the next slide, this is an example of how that initial concept came to actualize into an internal space. So on the left, you've got a Cat A as-built office plate, level 7, full of natural light, and a terrace also there on the right, just out of view. The core has been pushed to the east elevation, the darkest space essentially, to really encourage all of those views, all of the light into that Cat A space. It's got underfloor airflow, so it means you don't have all those HVACs above the ceiling, so it's all exposed concrete plank. And then, in turn, this is kind of how it's informed the facade. So we've got these strips of masonry and glass, which is really like homage to the existing masonry in the surrounding buildings. And I think the image on the left shows that as if you're standing in the existing gardens. And you can see the pocket park is almost serving as an extension of that existing space, which is something that we're really keen to do, improve on that greenery. And a concept from the beginning, colour and joy. So whether it's through colour, materiality, what we're looking at here is the glazed, kind of electric blue glazed bricks that we've used on the pub, and a homage to the site's context and history. You can see the little ship there is a motif. There's many of them. This one, for example, is based on Gulliver's Travels, which is based in Fetter Lane in the beginning of the book, and the pub's being fit out. Anyway, this is really quick. This is the material passporting, which is integral to the scheme. Material passporting is basically a database of all different material properties. It tells you where it's from, the embodied carbon, what's its lifespan, its warranties. And I've got QR codes with me I'd love to show you after this, but essentially it gives you all the information about the material, and it's encouraging to recycle, see value in materials, reuse on different future building projects. And I think to kind of touch back on the topic, one of the things we've learned is what people find valuable nowadays, and probably always have done, is links to nature, value to sustainability, and understanding the value of materials. And that's all I can think of off the top of my head. But, thank you.
Thank you so much, Francis. Yeah, it's definitely a challenge to all the speakers to try to condense some of these projects, which are years in the making, as I'm sure most of you are aware, into 5 minutes. So thank you so much for getting through so many different aspects of the project that you focused on. I think the material passporting sounds really interesting, so I'll definitely be coming over to you afterwards to check the QR code. So moving on now to a project at a slightly different point in its timeline. This project was the winner of the Master Plans and Place Strategies category, which celebrates placemaking strategies. So it's strategies that often aren't at the point of being built. They're developed over a long time, and this strategy was really awarded for having community and partnership at its core. And the winner demonstrates genuine co-design and inclusivity and embedding care and stewardship throughout the process and the strategy. So I'm really delighted to welcome Tanisha Rafiuddin from Concept Culture, who's creative director, and she's going to present the Neasden Town Centre strategy. Over to you, Tanisha.
Oh, no, you said I had time.
No, sorry, I need to give you another minute, sorry.
Oh, she's taking time away from me. All right, so like Lucy said, this project is slightly different to what you've seen so far. So there are no shiny images of completion, but a lot of colorful maps, as you will see. So I'm the creative director at Concept Culture. I am a recovering architect, but Concept Culture essentially is a creative agency. So I just wanted to put that context here because I'm not standing here in the position of an architect or an urban designer. Our role as Concept Culture on this project was a place identity consultants. I also host the Talking Place podcast, which is available wherever you listen to your podcast, so please do like and subscribe. All right, well, let's kick off. So tonight I want to take you into the heart of Neasden in northwest London. And like I said, I'm here representing the design team that delivered this placemaking and sustainability action plan for Brent Council as part of their bid for mayoral CPP funding. The design team comprised of Sanchez Benton Architects, who are the lead architect and urban designer, and Rumi Bose, who was the sustainability consultant, and Valerie Byrne, she was the engagement consultant, Valerie Byrne was the sustainability consultant. So why Neasden? Neasden is dense, diverse, infrastructure heavy, and historically has been underinvested. It's a place often dismissed, often overlooked, but has a lot of potential in terms of heritage. And 3 key themes emerged early on from engagement, and we listened closely to the community, and they said there was a desire for agency, dignity in public spaces, and a healthier, greener, everyday environment. So Neasden needed a living brief, one that evolves incrementally and collaboratively over time. We mapped out all of the relevant parties involved, and what emerged, as you'll see, is a powerful civic ecosystem comprising everything from youth groups, traders, residents, local creatives, the Met, Brent Council, and community organizations. So this network is now the foundation of long-term stewardship, and this, in a sense, is Neasden's greatest asset, its people. So what did the people tell us? When you actually walk through the high streets with people, the truth hits hard. Community feedback from various engagement activities was honest and direct, increasing concerns about safety, neglect, lack of green space, and poor connectivity. But equally, despite all of this, there was pride, cultural richness, and a strong appetite to co-create solutions. This was a community that's hungry for change, and these insights shaped every proposal in the action plan. So we developed a phased approach. The place strategy unfolds in phases across short, medium, and long-term interventions. Short-term interventions including creation of prototypes, like a kitchen, a community kitchen, Neasden Market, and the Lighthouse. Medium-term interventions included public realm interventions, greening through pocket forests and improved alleyways. And the long-term moves included the Grange, which we'll talk about in a second. So let's start with the short-term ones, the Lighthouse. The Lighthouse is a joyful demonstration of what's possible. It's a demountable pavilion occupying 3 parking bays. It becomes a civic stage, a festival hub, and a beacon for local identity. It's a prototype for permanent cultural anchor, and it demonstrates that regeneration isn't only about capital projects, but it's about moments that shift identity. Next up is the medium-term interventions, which are around public realm and wayfinding. So the interventions are meant to be strategic, murals as wayfinding, rain gardens to mitigate pollution, pocket forests to cool the street, and clearer pedestrian routes to improve safety. So these moves are intended to make Neasden greener, more legible, and more welcoming. And moving on to the Grange, and the Grange is a roundabout that offers a transformative long-term opportunity here. Today, it is a nature reserve, but it is isolated by the existing infrastructure. But tomorrow, the hope is that it becomes a town green, reconnected to the high street and framed by civic and cultural buildings. This is about repairing the existing severance and restoring ecological value in the town center. So as the starting point was about partnerships and stewardship. So what sustains regeneration in the long term is engagement, partnerships, and stewardships. So circling back to our earlier civic ecosystem map, Neasden has an existing network of artists, cultural operators, traders, and residents ready to co-author the next chapter alongside civic partners and Brent Council. So this is how we envision this regeneration plan becoming resilient through community leadership. And their stewardship will ensure that the plan isn't just a one-off regeneration project, but a long-term cultural and civic moment. So what does long-term impact look like? Improved public realm, new infrastructure, safer connections, cultural programming, and enterprise opportunities, and a stronger civic identity. The grand prize, the GLA recognized the action plan's ambition and awarded 3.1 million as part of the funding to bring it to life. And this, we were told, was the largest pot allocated to all the bidders. Brent Council matched this funding and approved a further 10.5 million to deliver the scheme. Personally, I believe that the project won the NLA Award because it tackles the hardest problem in town centre regeneration, how to move from strategy to sustained action in places like Neasden with real social, economic, and political complexity. This project demonstrates another way. Start smaller, share authorship, and embed culture early, and design for the long game. And if we're serious about the future of London's town centres, this is the level of honesty, patience, and ambition the work now demands. For me, this is the real story. When you give people authorship, you enable places to transform from the inside out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tanisha. Yeah, that was such incredible insight into how the strategy is already unfolding in really beautiful ways, and can't wait to see how that develops. So on to now our final speaker of the night. Before I will invite all the speakers back up for an audience Q&A, so do be getting those questions ready. But for our final presentation, I'm delighted to invite Dieter Kleiner, who's Director of RCKA, and will present the winning project of both the housing category and also the overall winner of the NLA Awards 2025. And the jury really praised this scheme, and it kind of earned the overall winner as a powerful example of what can be achieved through community partnership and purpose. And it's a really beautiful scheme, but also combines affordability and inclusive programming. So yeah, really looking forward to hear from Dieter. Welcome you up, Dieter, yeah.
Thank you. Great, thanks. Yeah, and a fantastic theme seems to be running through all the projects this evening, actually, about that. So, yes, great. Probably put my notes out first. Yeah, we might be the winner of winners, but not necessarily the best speaker. I'm just going to set people's expectations before we start. Okay. So, I think we have a slight polemic that we'd like to kind of communicate with this very short presentation, and that's that a lot of architects will naturally focus on the constraints of a project and look at the building and as architecture as a product. And they'll design often through constraint. And this site has a lot of constraints. It's a backland, sort of dead-end cul-de-sac. It's in a conservation area with listed buildings on its edges, mansion blocks, grade 2 1960s buildings. But the opportunity lies in taking an inclusive approach. There was 167 stakeholder groups that are listed on this little diagram here that we had to engage with through the process of this building project and design. And these are local people who are knowledgeable and committed to their local area. So it's challenging for the right reasons, and it's critical to engage honestly and openly and to learn from this lived experience. And when you let people in, you can have a much more positive outcome for a project. So we designed a multi-layered engagement process, actually, in addition to a building, to listen and learn and to build trust. A structured process with structured groups that we ran alongside, open engagement sessions on the streets, separated groups such as young person steering groups, and identified a separate stream of engagement because there was a youth venue in there, as well as a community centre, as well as housing. And this process evolved. We had to act nimbly, but it created space for local people. With project champions, who originally, we referred to them as project champions, and they quickly told us actually we'd prefer to be referred as community champions. So we were told very, very clearly of their role within the project. But we were as responsive and as honest and open as we could be. These slides really just illustrate a snapshot of us demonstrating the costs of development and the balance between how many homes we provided and how much community space we could provide. So we were as open, as honest as we possibly could be about letting people into the real problems we were grappling with as a design team, rather than the superficial layers. We took walking tours in the area, and we took a bit of an interest and read up on the knowledge and the history of that area. So we shared our information and learning of the area, and they shared their political and social heritage and layers within that walk. That was all to build trust and to have a common shared understanding of place, and also to understand and raise the challenges about taste and style and character, of which we were not all on the same page. They were not all on the same page. And it was really interesting to allow that space of disharmony, if you like, and have these open discussions. It also identified the main drivers of the project through this process. So there's a community to the north that didn't even know the community centre existed. How big does this building need to be to provide the services that the community require on the site? And what does that mean in terms of impact? What are they willing to allow us to trust? What is their appetite for change? And only through these sort of building trust in these meetings we were able to do that. Then we also had to be nimble and open. So there was a process of refining that approach to the design. So once you had the overall scale of things, how do you work around the edges? How do you craft a building into its place that also delivers on these commitments that we've made to the community? Oh, my head, so amazing. Sure, it's not stuck. But the outcome, oh, there we go. And the outcome is about a building that's much more integrated into its place, where it's crafted and connected, the way it weaves in and out of the existing character areas and speaks to them, both in the physical context, but in the social context as well, that it opens up views and it offers connection. And we've tried this from around the site because it's carved into the area physically and socially, but also into the main space, which is the courtyard at the centre of the site. We introduced a character that drew upon the local architectural references, such as the concrete of the 1960s building, such as the red brick of the mansion blocks. And we added a speckled brickwork, but only to the centre of the courtyard. So it drew you into the centre of the site where you had the public space that brought everyone and everything together. So the housing enters off this site, the community users enter off the site, the youth users enter off the site, and this is a brand new public route that connects areas that hitherto were not connected. And there was a terrible alley around the back. So it's all about the heart of the proposals actually is speaking to our commitment to the local people. And ultimately, we deliver a building that's flexible in its use. And so we're really looking forward to this project blossoming even further. It's great to have the building finished, but actually what we're really looking forward to is seeing all the new uses that come to use the building, from affordable laundrettes to the hairdressing salon, which wasn't even planned at the beginning, which this just shows has opened, and to cultural events and social events happening within the square and providing a safe and connected community across the new part of London. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dieter. I love that project so much, and I think it was really telling that the international jury were all saying that they would love to see a project like that exist in their city, where they work, where they're from, where they live. And I think it's just speaks to the really extensive engagement process that you did, and both the kind of physical response of the building and also the social response to the context as well. So thank you so much for that presentation. I'm going to invite you back up, and also all of the other speakers to join me for a Q&A. There's going to be a roaming mic around. Yeah, we have one there. So please do just make yourself known if you have a question. Speakers, you're welcome to come back up. Yeah, or you can just stand. We're joined by Alan as well, who also was working on that last project we just saw. He delivered the project. Any questions? I know it's a lot of information. Oh yeah, we've got one there. Great.
Thank you, first of all, to all the speakers. I think that was really inspiring and fantastic projects and fantastic presentations there. Question for Kevin. It was great to see what you're doing there. I live down the road from there in Tooting. And my question really is how well do you think what you're doing there could translate to existing high streets that are struggling? And my prime example is Tooting. Please bring that up the road and do something.
Thanks for the question. That's some of the work we're actually starting to get into now. And actually, the original, project that set up what we did at New Acres was actually in Poole. There was a place called Kingland, and basically there was a shopping centre outside of it. There was this kind of space with 10 empty shops, and this emptiness was kept on pouring out onto the street. And so we reimagined the shop fronts, reimagined the spaces. We worked with L&G, who owned the land. They had to put together a very healthy financial package to support independent businesses. So 2 years rent-free, rates-free, everything was free, a model to support them in how you develop businesses. I think the answer to your question is that if I was just to come along, we could do some bits of it, but actually it's about a kind of, you need a developer or a council that are open to developing financial models to support businesses or help get them a start. You need a community of what's the vision for this place, so we don't end up with high streets looking exactly the same. And you need architects and designers who are going to go in there and meet those people. And so it's quite a complex thing, but it's a challenge we're really excited to take on. So I will come down to Tooting, and we should have a coffee and talk about it.
Thanks, Kevin. Any other questions? If not, I've got loads, so. Yeah, one there? Great.
Hi, Francis? Francis Kroll. Thank you. I really enjoyed your talk about how to make that workspace work. And one thing I would like to know is that with the workspace, and you said you took a minimalist design, but certainly with the fit out, so where do you draw the line with the shell and core? So do you say, because you're so focused on sustainability within your design, do you put limits on what the occupants can do, or is there a sort of a material aspect to fix that?
Good question, thank you. I guess, I mean, you could take our office as an example, but first I'd say, like, I guess the first instance is choosing materials and specifications that don't really need to be changed in the first instance. So, for example, like in this example, the ceilings were maintained at very high. The ceilings were maintained super clean and large, clear heights with beautiful concrete core, etc. Anyway, for example, in our office, which you're more than welcome to visit, we've kept it almost exactly as you see it in that image. And I think that really what that says about the space is that if you create something that you really like and you think is really beautiful, is really genuine, and the materials stand out, then it turns out there's not that much that you need to change. I hope that answers your question. But it's also interesting because there are other tenants, for example, people who move upstairs, depending on what kind of industry you're in, who can take a different approach. But the bones of the building remain the same. People still enjoy openable windows. People still enjoy views out into nature. They still enjoy civic and public spaces and greenery. So I guess it's really open to interpretation, but making sure that those core materials are thoughtful, then you can't really go wrong, I guess.
Question there? Yeah, great.
Hey, I've got a question for Oliver. I just wondered if you could talk me through a bit more about what it was like to work with a brief that's completely based around this wall, and how you went through the process of deciding to open that up, whether that came to you as a brief, or whether you identified that yourself as the potential opportunity. I think it's a wonderful project, just kind of what you're able to do with that sort of space.
The talk was really focused on one part of the project. The project also provided new studio space and a kind of deep retrofit of the existing building. But I think one of the reasons we wanted to talk about the wall was because this kind of theme of opening the building up to the public kind of brought this question about the facade into play in a way that was quite challenging for an organisation which had never really had a public face. And what's interesting about Cockpit when you go there is, it's full of people making amazing stuff. It's sort of easy to sort of see it as a bit of a kind of gallery space, lots of interesting objects and jewellery and things being made. But this is also a place of work. These are all small businesses. There's a kind of interesting tension between wanting to bring the public in because the public are their consumers, but they're also private businesses. So there are security issues and all sorts of things like that at play. So the ambition was really to try and use this sort of found opportunity, which was this kind of secret garden. We were talking about it earlier, and Francis reminded me that the first time we got there, we realised you couldn't actually get into that garden. There was literally no way of they'd lost the key. The tiny door to the street was graffitied and blocked. You had to climb out of a window. And so it sort of felt like these little kind of pockets of space around the building that were being used for makers, storing materials, and all those sorts of things were also like a really interesting way to sort of deal with this kind of, I guess, kind of buffer between the kind of public and private sides of the building. And I think then when it brought together a lot of important themes for Cockpit, in particular the kind of visibility of the organisation, this idea of like collaborating with makers to do something that literally expressed what they do. So, yeah, it felt like although it was only one bit of the project, it felt like an area where like everyone kind of had a lot of energies focused on it. One thing I didn't talk about in the talk was that Cockpit have an interesting calendar through the year where they have several kind of key events where they really open up the whole building to the public. And so also kind of introducing a bit of a kind of drama around that moment, kind of literally being able to throw open those gates and have kind of parties and events in that space was very important to them. So it was sort of about like creating the spaces where those things could happen.
Any more questions? Oh, my mic is on. No? Okay, I might end with a question. Well, we might have, if someone thinks of another question in the next couple of minutes while I ask my question, then feel free and we can maybe end on that. But perhaps it's a question to all of you around kind of engagement. I think obviously all of you spoke about extensive engagement processes that you did in different ways and clearly how they've impacted the process. But I'm kind of curious whether you've seen the impact in kind of the final outcome of the project. And I'm aware you might not have spent too much time going back to the building. I don't really know whether it's a bit like you're an actor who doesn't want to watch your own film. I don't know, but yeah, just kind of whether you've seen the outcome of that process in the build piece.
I mean, obviously the Super Satellite Next itself lasted a year and a half, and it was there to create the vision of what is coming. And so all of in fact, the future of that ground floor was directly driven through all the community engagement. So the stuff that is coming is directly what we learnt and being embedded in. I was living there, I've just moved out, I was there for 2 years, but I go back every week. I'm there on a Wednesday. We're still running workshops, meeting businesses. And the next sort of thing we're working on now is the market that came out of ideas gathered at the Super Satellite Next. We're working on public art sculpture for the area. So it's an ongoing project. And in fact, actually, we're about to change the name of the practice. It's this idea of immersing ourselves into places has become such a thread of what we do. So we'll always go back to buildings. We're always they keep on evolving, and that's what we enjoy.
I think when we were designing our building, actually, it was through COVID, so we had quite our engagement with the school was quite often. So, for example, when we saw the white card models that I showed, we set the brief online. So we kind of went into their classroom on a screen and talked about it, and then we went in and did some stuff on their own, and then we would show it to us. And so there's kind of it was quite difficult, but as the year went by, we kind of went back and we kind of got to know them a bit. So I think we also had to do a consultation with the community online. So there was a lot of the planning thing was all online too. So we kind of had to be kind of creative in how we did that. We actually discovered quite a few people turned up almost more online for planning consultation because they could, and because they were nothing else to do, so they would turn up. And generally, there was a lot more positivity than sometimes when you go to planning consultation, which is also quite negative. So that's just an observation. I think for the things that we learned, and things like the acoustics being such a quiet, that was a big deal. Which I think we all had a bit of a question because we were spending quite a lot of money on putting a lot of the acoustic treatment in, and should we do that when maybe we don't need to? But actually, we absolutely did, and it's such a lovely space. Whenever I go back there, I always think it's a very calm space compared to where we used to go, and I guess that's all come about from just talking. So I think, yeah, that's all really. That's amazing.
This particular project hasn't been built yet, Lucy, but and it was a very short period of time that we had the engagement. The whole project had to be completed in 3 months. It was very challenging because we were commissioned at the end of December, so we're moving into a holiday period, and then have to have everything ready for January, February, and look at February now. It's not the best weather to have community engagement, but because the community was so disenfranchised and the council felt like the council had ignored them for a long time, they showed up with a lot of energy and enthusiasm, even though they admittedly say, yes, this isn't the best place to live, why would anyone come here? But they were hungry for change, and that, I think, that energy and their ambition for what they wanted the place to be was kind of what drove all the proposals that you see, and eventually led to winning the funding, and now we'll see the rollout of the actual delivery.
I think for us, Cockpit's in a part of Deptford that has changed dramatically in the last few years and is continuing to change. And we were very fortunate that our involvement with them started actually by helping them understand how they could respond to some of the things that were happening around them. And what started as kind of responses to sort of neighbouring planning applications then kind of morphed into Cockpit starting to think more seriously about what they would do with their own site. And it was a really kind of slow-paced and kind of nice way into thinking about a project. And I think one of the things that enabled over time was conversations with their makers over quite a long period of time, which was firstly really important in terms of building trust and being able to kind of talk to them genuinely about their ambitions for their spaces. I think part of that is about the fact that Cockpit's mission to support makers involves, they're quite different from a lot of maker spaces and studio space providers because they provide business mentoring. And so they're really looking to try and like upskill their makers with all sorts of things like online marketing skills and stuff like that. And so sort of central to the project, one of the things I didn't talk about today is that there are some education spaces that we did for those purposes. But actually what's been really interesting is to see that the makers have responded to that by really upping, for example, the amount of workshops they do. And that's been kind of interesting to see makers, for example, starting to do things like workshops with local community groups as a kind of big part of their revenue stream and as a kind of part of their kind of business diversification. So I think that kind of lesson of sort of seeing how that engagement has played out has been seeing the opportunity for those more flexible spaces in the building to kind of anticipate how the neighbourhood is changing and enable Cockpit to kind of respond and enable the makers to respond.
So I think you mentioned collaboration. So the first thing that comes to mind in terms of collaboration with Fetter Lane is that we worked from the get-go really very closely with the City of London in order to further develop the brief with the clients. And they were super keen, as were we, on the historical context of the site and how we kind of reinforce that concept, as well as the many other layers of the civic, the sustainable. And I think that with the City of London, it was really exciting to kind of drive that brief. One of those things, for example, was the public house, which I very briefly touched upon, which was that big, bright blue building. And with the city, we kind of formulated this idea of the glazed bricks. Well, firstly, that the pub was basically a reintroduction of one of the many lost public houses in London, the Wild Swan. At the time, it was known as the White Swan. And we use it as an opportunity to introduce these motifs, which is a really playful and fun way of decorating the building with the history of that area. But I think with that collaboration also came the challenge of, well, how do you pay homage to that historical context, but also make a building future-proof? And that would bring in the additional layer of collaboration that comes to mind with Waterman's, for example, and the material passporting, which I think has been a really successful part of the project. It's got a really positive response. And the final thing I'll touch on is we've got a really valuable experience of being the occupiers of this building on ground and level 1. And having been there for about 6-7 months now, it's been a real pleasure to see how these spaces, these civic areas, such as the cafe, the park, is starting to bring more people to that area, and it's less of this kind of static banker, City of London streets. And yes, and the pub is hopefully opening halfway through the next year, and we're very keen to see that.
I've infiltrated the panel, so it's nice to see you all. I think it's really sort of easy actually to talk about just engagement as a positive and just see it only as a positive. But actually, I'm going to be a bit controversial here. I think like there's a lot of fear in trying to build projects in really sensitive locations, and a lot of the community that we dealt with throughout this whole process was very much about us just trying to listen, just trying to learn, just trying to onboard with people. And I think the takeaway that I have from the project, which lasted 10 years, that you might touch on, is that, you know, you can't win the hearts and minds of everyone. And it's a bit naive to think that as well, that we can just build projects that everyone's going to love. I think at the end of the day, you have challenges in building projects, but if we place ourselves in the environment to let people talk and let people have opinions on projects, we can actually use our skill sets as architects to make the best decisions, you know, that we think is the right decision to make. So my memory, if I think about one in particular, is at one point in the project we had a really challenging set of engagement events, really. I think, you know, we thought we were building the right scale and the right massing on the development, and I think the feedback was very, you know, quite negative. It was like, you know, we feel like you're overbuilding, we feel like you're pushing the boundaries too far. And there was one or two individuals where that almost got into their mindset and it was retained. And I think what the beauty of the project and the outcome is those people now, some of them are using the centre, picking up a coffee, using the building, having day-to-day conversations within it, and actually a couple of them have become trustees of the centre. So I think you can't dismiss the fact that there's fears on projects and that we're all humans and we're not going to make the best decisions. But I think being open and being listening and just communicating in a really professional way is the way to go. And it's just not easy, is my reflection on it. It's actually a challenge.
Thank you so much, Alan. Did you want to add anything, Dieter?
Well, yeah, I think that's super important. I just actually shift the focus a little bit also away from sort of design professionals and architects. So what RTK is now got a bit of a reputation for engagement. How do you design for people if you don't understand their needs, which is what drew us into that field, if you like. Actually, I think what we've learned is, as we've heard from many people on the panel, actually, developing partnerships and collaborations are the things that are the most impactful. And I think the lesson on HNCP was, it was called HNCC. So it was called Highgate Newtown Community Centre. And something that most organisations or clients would see as a real problem and a real challenge was your site will be closed down for a year or two while we're building this thing. They went out and they took a positive, we engaged, as part of the engagement, they joined us on that. And they connected with local organisations to outreach and share their facilities and build stronger connections. And they changed their name to Highgate Newtown Community Partnerships and brought them back into the building afterwards. So the actual mindset of collaboration outside of architecture can be incredibly impactful. And I think we should consider that as well as the design professionals outside the lifespan of a project.
Thank you so much. I think that, yeah, is such a beautiful note to end on. Thank you so much for all your responses. I've probably gone over a little bit over time because I've been so excited to hear more about these projects, but I'm going to give you guys a bit of time. We have until 8:15, so we have about 15 minutes. So you can grab another drink, come and talk to our amazing speakers. Should we just thank them all again? Just give everyone another round of applause.